Imagine the most fortified corporate campuses on Earth. Imagine the pristine glass towers of Silicon Valley, the high-security server farms, and the massive, multi-billion-dollar cybersecurity budgets dedicated to defending these digital citadels. We are conditioned to believe that if a breach occurs, it must be the work of a shadowy, state-sponsored intelligence agency or a team of elite, hyper-intelligent hackers working from a bunker, unraveling complex encryption one line of code at a time. That is the Hollywood version of reality. But the story of Lapsus completely shattered that illusion. It proved that the most powerful digital empires can be brought to their knees not by super weapons or secret algorithms, but by a handful of teenagers, some basic social engineering, and an utter lack of fear. Lapsus was a chaotic, loud, and brazen collective that didn't just hack tech giants, they humiliated them. To understand Lapsus, you have to abandon the idea of the super hacker. There was no sophisticated, zero-day exploit that allowed them to tunnel into the internal networks of Nvidia, Microsoft, Samsung, Okta, and Uber. Instead, their methodology was rooted in the oldest form of hacking in existence, hacking people. They operated in a world where the weakest link wasn't the firewall, it was the employee. Lapsus specialized in what experts call telco hacking. They would target the telecommunications providers that service the employees of these massive corporations. By using social engineering, bribery, or sheer persistence, they would convince customer support agents to perform a SIM swap, transferring a target's phone number to a device controlled by the hackers. Once they had the victim's phone number, they could intercept the multi-factor authentication codes meant to secure their work accounts. Suddenly, the hacker was no longer an outsider. They were, for all intents and purposes, a legitimate employee. This was the human firewall, crumbling in real time. Lapsus didn't need to break into the building, they were handed the keys by the very people employed to secure it. Once inside, they didn't act like quiet, stealthy spies. They were loud. They were performative. They turned their breaches into a public spectacle. They would post screenshots of internal corporate dashboards on their Telegram channel, bragging about how much data they had stolen, how many gigabytes of source code they were downloading, and how easily they had bypassed the world-class security measures of some of the most valuable companies on the planet. For Lapsus, the breach wasn't just about the data, it was about the clout. They wanted the world to know who they were, and they wanted the tech giants to know how vulnerable they really were. Their hit list reads like a Fortune 500 index. When they targeted Nvidia, they didn't just steal internal documents, they effectively blackmailed the company, demanding they make their GPU drivers open source. When they breached Microsoft, they leaked chunks of source code for Bing and Cortana. When they hit Okta, a company that manages the identity and access for thousands of other businesses, they weren't just stealing data, they were attacking the very foundation of corporate trust. Each breach was a fresh blow to the ego of the tech industry, a stark, uncomfortable reminder that despite billions of dollars spent on EDR, SIEM, and AI-driven threat detection, the basics, like ensuring that a help desk employee cannot be tricked into handing over a remote access credential, were still fundamentally broken. The most jarring aspect of the Lapsus saga was the demographic reality of the group. As the investigations deepened and law enforcement agencies, including the FBI and the City of London Police, began to close in, the world learned that this wasn't an organized crime syndicate operating from an offshore haven. It was a loose-knit group of teenagers, some of whom were living with their parents, going to school, and seemingly living ordinary lives. The arrest of a teenager in Oxford, England, became the defining moment of the saga. He was just a kid who had figured out how to leverage the interconnected nature of our digital identity systems. He didn't have a PhD in computer science, he had a smartphone, a Telegram account, and the audacity to target companies that most people were too intimidated to even approach. This revelation sent a shockwave through the cybersecurity industry. It forced a massive, painful reflection on the state of digital defense. If teenagers with minimal resources could bypass the defenses of Microsoft, what chance did anyone else have? It exposed a reality that the industry had been trying to ignore for years. The human factor is the most expensive and the most vulnerable component of any security strategy. Lapsus taught the world that you can spend a fortune on high-tech locks, but if the locksmith is someone who can be bribed or tricked over a phone call, your security is an illusion. The climax of the Lapsus dollar chaos occurred when they breached Rockstar Games, the developer behind the Grand Theft Auto franchise. They leaked hours of early, unpolished footage of the highly anticipated GTA V, causing a global media sensation. It was a move that had nothing to do with money or political espionage and everything to do with pure, unadulterated mischief. It was the ultimate, look at me, moment. But it was also the moment the walls closed in. The sheer volume of attention they attracted, the massive financial impact on the companies they targeted, and the blatant, unapologetic nature of their crimes made them the top priority for law enforcement agencies worldwide. The game of cat and mouse had reached its natural conclusion. The arrests followed, and the Telegram channel that had acted as their digital megaphone went silent. But the legacy of Lapsus dollar remains. They are a case study in the power of social engineering and the fragility of our modern, hyper-connected infrastructure. They proved that we have built an economy where we rely so heavily on automated verification, remote access, and cloud-based authentication that we have created a centralized point of failure, the human being. Lapsus dollar showed us that the digital transformation of the 21st century has also been a transformation of risk.